Episode 8 of the Bmoney Beastin podcast. Noticeably, we're missing somebody. The original Bmoney's at school. We're doing this during school hours, so any of those kids out there, education's important.
That's right.
I'm Jesse Drennen, founder of Bmoney Beastin Athletics. I am here with head coach Randal Jennings from Ground Zero Wrestling.
Appreciate you having me on today, man.
Dude, I'm glad to talk to you, man. I've had fun over the past few months doing gear and stuff with you guys. Like, those shirts turned out really cool.
They're awesome. The kids love them. Everybody likes the design and everything. I'm excited about getting it rolling for AAU, man.
I look forward to seeing the singlets. I may order just an extra one and just have it because I think they look pretty cool.
I appreciate it, man. I couldn't do it without you. So
let's start out, man. You had a big announcement today. Tell us all about it.
Yeah, man. Just found out last night through the grapevine and stuff that we got voted for the Club of the Year for TN USA Wrestling this year. So big accomplishment for Ground Zero Wrestling as a whole. Our kids, our parents, supporters. Couldn't do it without all of our coaches. We're always here, there, and everywhere at different tournaments and things like that. So it takes a crew, and we definitely got a good one. So it's good to see that kind of pay off a little bit.
That is awesome, man. And then on top of that, like for people that's going to see this, they need to understand like where you are because you're in a very remote area to accomplish something like that. You're in a very remote area.
We are, as far as wrestling's considered. I mean, we're an hour south of Nashville, an hour north of Chattanooga, right off 24 in the Manchester area. I grew up here. When I wrestled in high school, I graduated in 2009. There was no options like this. I didn't even know freestyle and Greco was a thing until I got into college and experienced it there. So I'm just trying to give these kids some opportunities that I didn't get and just try to present things to them that, we get to go travel nationally and get that next level experience and send some kids off to college and all that good stuff. So it's been a good ride so far, and I'm looking forward to building off this.
Man, it's kind of a thing where, remote areas, and even down here where we're in North Georgia. So even down here where we're at, we have Pitts, of course, down in Dalton, which he's been kind of a staple in this area. And then Minions opened about 3 years ago. But like in terms of like, within, that's probably 20, 30 minutes either direction, right?
Right. Yes, sir.
And we got parents that, work and pay bills and have schedules and things. And it's expensive sometimes, right? Like last week, training centers can be very expensive. But if you're something that's within a 10 to 15 minute, from high schools and middle schools and things, and you're reasonably affordable, which you are, right?
Yes, sir. Definitely we are.
It brings a great value to not just, the community you're in, but the programs in your community.
That's the goal, man. Just to help give those kids some, like I said, it keeps coming back to added opportunities. Just all about keeping them on the mats and, trying to grow them as wrestlers and just grow wrestling in Tennessee. We went to a tournament this past weekend and I made a post about they were expecting 150 kids and they had 330. So, to see growth like that is awesome. And talking about us being in a rural area, we cater to anybody. It's not just one specific team or club or anything like that. Obviously, we've got a good group of Coffee County, Warren County, Tullahoma, Franklin County guys and gals that are here near, but we've also got kids that drive down from Murfreesboro. We've got guys and girls that come down from Clarksville, as far out as Cookeville, Chattanooga. I mean, we've got about an hour and a half radius that we pull kids in from. So it's good to give those kids different looks and see them grow together.
Absolutely. Randy, McCauley told me that he goes up there from time to time.
He did. They were up Sunday, actually. I got to get my hands on Ian a little bit, so that was a good time.
Dude, he, I didn't realize that Jasper was like so centrally located between like downtown and then up where you guys were. So I thought that was really cool. And, we're doing their middle school singlets. I guess Jasper's having their first middle school season this year.
Yeah, I heard about that. They're getting it rolling, so that's awesome, man.
That is a great thing for yet another remote area in the state of Tennessee, right?
Hey, and I'll tell you real quick. I'll just tell you right now, those Marion County boys, they're coming on this year. They've got a good group of kids that have been, They go some of them go down to Minions and see Sean, and some of them come up to us and bounce back and forth and things like that. And that Jasper Marion County area is coming on strong.
It's going to be like there's one kid, like we're at Minion, I guess 4 nights a week, right? Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday.
Yes,
And
sir.
you meet all kinds of people that drop in or whatever, or people you've known for years. Like I see Nate Murdoch all the time, and Harrison's walking around all jacked up like a bulldog since he was like 5 years old. So you find a mix of people, but it seems like there is quite a few people from Marion County that come up there. And the only one I knew of for a long time was Ian, right? Like I'm like,
Yep.
he's a stud kid, man, without a doubt. And I was like, okay, so they got one kid down there. And then there was another one and another one and another one. So, dude, that middle school team could be pretty good this year. And nobody's going to know that. Like, it's going to come out of nowhere.
Nowhere. Yep. And that's always the best when somebody just jumps on the radar like that.
It's going to be fun. I'll keep up with it. I'm really excited. Tell me, man, like I know that you're from that area and then you wrestled in college. And tell us how you went from college to where you are now. I know you got a little boy who's just a doll, man. We met him that morning at breakfast. So, like,
Yes,
tell us
sir.
like how this whole ground zero concept kind of came together from college to now.
Yes, sir. I mean, like I said, I graduated high school in '09, and I wrestled here at Coffee County and stuff. They didn't start a program until '05, which was my freshman year. So me and a friend of mine were our first 4-year letterman there. And we didn't have any kind of AAU wrestling or anything growing up. So we just, kind of got thrown into the mix. I got to be a decent high school wrestler and thought I was a lot better than I actually was, and found out once I got to NTSU and wrestled for their club, that there's just a whole nother level to it. And that just kind of reignited my fire and just caused me to grow some more. I wrestled there for 2 years and then started coaching at Coffee County with their high school team and was an assistant there for 8 years, I believe. Um, and man, those first 4 or 5 years, being as young as I was and getting into the coaching mix, took a lot of learning. I'll definitely say I probably did a lot of wrong things along the way, but I learned from them, and I definitely feel like I've grown and use all that to use all that knowledge nowadays. But we kind of started with 1 or 2 wrestlers out here in my garage, where I'm sitting at right now, and you can see all the names on the wall of all the kids who've been through here. But we kind of started in like 2011 with me and one kid, Ryan Bozich, and he just poured himself in, and it just kind of started to grow. And like I said, I coached at Coffee County for about 8 years. I went up to Tullahoma and helped out with their kids club for a year. And then it just kind of got to the point where I had some things happen in my personal life and had to take a step back for a little bit. And I just decided, it was time. Like, this is something that I truly love and I've always wanted to do. And I just had the opportunity present itself. And we went from my 30 by 30 garage, we'd had 30, 35 kids in here some night. And we got lucky and found a spot right here in Manchester where we've got 3 full size mats now in March of this year. So if we weren't able to find that place and hook up with Metro Industrial and those guys and gals, we wouldn't be able to flourish like we have. And ever since we've been there, it's just really blossomed, man. Over the last 2 years, we've really dove into the national scene and tried to give our kids, like I talked about, some more experience. And we go to, I mean, we've been to Iowa for preseason nationals. We're going to Michigan next weekend for the Grappler Fall Classic, Super 32, Fargo. I mean, you name it, we've probably been there at this point. So, um, I mean, we're rolling strong now. It's good to we've got some coaches coming in. Tori Fearbacher, who wrestled for me, helps us coach. Zaniah Shropshire, who was a state champ up at Independence, is helping us. Ray Reyes, Jeremiah Wardell, just a lot of kids that wrestled through our program and stuff are coming back in. So that's just where we're at now, man. Tennessee Club of the Year this year, so we're looking forward to continuing that growth.
Where did the name come from? Ground Zero.
Me, like I said, Ryan Bozich was my first kid, and we were just out here and we were talking about, built from nothing, built from ground up. Like, what can we do off that? And he actually spouted out, ground zero sounds pretty cool, and we just hit the ground running with it and never looked back, man. So I got to give credit to him on that one.
That's awesome, dude. Like man, I've always been like in my lifetime. Like I grew up in like a really rural. Like I'm from between Rossville, Georgia, and Ringgold, Georgia. That's basically
Yes,
where I
sir.
grew up. But like they're rural, really rural areas, right? Like there's not really a
County
lot of
boys.
opportunity. And I always root for that kind of thing. Like people that are trying to bring something that's really never existed to a community. That's just an amazing thing. Dude, I love it. I'm your biggest fan. I don't think you ever
I,
know it.
well,
Anytime I see you post something, I put it on our Instagram. Like, I love you guys.
Man, I brag about you all the time for the support you've shown us in the short amount of time that we've gotten to know each other and things, and it's truly appreciated, and it goes both ways. So thank you for all you do.
Question, man. Like, so we kind of covered like where you came from, the club, where the name come from, which is really interesting because I think maybe I'm the only one that knows that at the moment. Moving forward, you're starting to take these kids to these national tournaments. Last week on the podcast, me and Bryson, we had this debate talking about, and our whole podcast was wrapped around 10 key essentials to build like a winning program. Now, we were talking about more of like a high school team and like how you need a feeder and how you need a solid middle school and how you need to utilize social media. If you go back and watch episode 7, it covers so many things. But we brought up like for the past, 20 years, maybe 15 years, Cleveland's been the standard in the state of Tennessee, right?
Yes,
and,
sir.
And that's for like from the beginners to the
ground up. Yep.
Yeah. And they've done that by kind of breaking up, I think, how they do things. They have different coaches that roll through now. Like, how do you break up practices in terms of skill level? Because I think that's an interesting thing to talk about.
It is. We're kind of going through some growing stages with that right now. When we started, everybody was kind of on a similar level because it was our core group. But now with us having kids kind of come in from here, there, and everywhere, everybody's at a different stage. We try to break up and do some smaller groups when we can, but for the most part, we just divide it up by we'll do our little GZ class, which is pretty much 4 years old to 6th grade, or we'll throw some 7th, 8th grade beginners in there. But after that, I mean, we just do a middle school, high school open group, and they kind of get baptized by fire is the way we look at it. It does tend to, if you've got some kids that are fresh, it might run some off, unfortunately, but I think in the long run that it does kind of, present a better product in the end.
Absolutely, man. It's good that you said that because I can tell you a quick funny story I think you'll really appreciate. 2016, I think it might have been 15, 16 is when I signed Bryson up to wrestling with Eastridge Wrestling Club back in the day with Ryan Tisdale. And that weekend, he had said, well, the beginner tournament's on Sunday at Gordon Lee or whatever. I signed him up at Red Bank, which was like an open, right? He was like a whatever he was. And the damn kid, man, I swear, it was the funniest thing. He wrestles and he makes it. I guess they were like in the 3rd place match or something, right? And he doesn't have a clue, right, what the scoring is. Like, he takes somebody down and then let him up and just let him stand up and take him down. Dude, it was ridiculous. And the funniest thing in the world was he was winning like 10-3. All right, that's a pretty big gap. And then it ended up being tied at 13. To like go to overtime, and he's like sucking wind, and he says no, and he throws his headgear, and it like hits this old woman, and then he runs out into the truck, and I was like, okay, I'll see y'all tomorrow, and we just kind of went home. So like I think that even at a young age, like even kids, like good kids that are in high school, they still get beat up in practice at times.
Oh yeah.
So like that, if you learn that even at a young age, that's a good thing. If you're not coddling to those kids, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean the good old some days you're the hammer, some days you're the nail saying, it nails it right there. Some days you're going to be the big dog in the room, and some days you got to get beat on to learn some of those lessons and things. And if you're not getting beat on, it might be time to find another room or find some people to push you a little bit more, and that's just part of the sport, and you got to do what's best for you at times.
I don't feel like I've always said this, right? If you're beating the piss out of everybody in the room you're in, you're not improving. Like I feel like you kind of have to have a balance between you do need a beginner to work on moves with, or maybe not a beginner, but a middle of the road kid, and one that can give you a fight and a good feel, but that you can hit moves on. And then you need somebody that you got to fight to score on. And I think kind of having that balance really like helps grow, like how your skill level.
I can agree more.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I couldn't agree more, man. Like we have our Sunday scraps where we do every Sunday. We just do pretty much an open mat style hour and a half practice where we get a quick warm up in. I set 4 minute rounds and you just go, and we get live goes in and you'll see kids. I mean, we've got our little GZ guys that want to get some extra mat time that jump out there that are 5 and 6 and have never wrestled in a tournament, and you got our college guys that come back in the room, and you just get to see all levels, see them work together, and it's hard for me to argue against it whenever you see things like that and how well littles and bigs and new and experienced and all that work together.
And something I've noticed like over the years, like because basically the two clubs we've spent our most time with was Grindhouse, which
Yep.
I'm repping right now. Matt, love you, dude.
I'm a big supporter of Matt, man.
I love Matt, dude. I actually pitched him some Matt class yesterday. I'm waiting to hear back on that. But yeah, Matt, it was funny because like we've spent our time with him and with Sean for like 3 years. And one thing I've noticed over the years, and I'm very observant, right? So like everything I ever speak about, it's something I've seen or witnessed.
Yes, sir.
And when Bryson was little, he always looked up to Ollie and those older kids, right? And now he's one of the older ones at Minion, and like the little kids will kind of look up to that age of kids. And I think by putting them together, it kind of forces the little ones to kind of try to keep up, maybe.
Definitely.
And I think that only benefits them in the long run.
It does, man, and it just builds that sense of family and builds that. Like, I mean, you talked about Cleveland earlier. One thing they have that is you can't argue against is culture, and it only builds that culture more.
Absolutely, yeah. And man, like Cleveland, the thing about Cleveland that they have right now that most programs don't is they really have like so much community support. Like whenever you win like 8 or 10 or whatever they're at now, state championships in a row, like everybody in the community is going to jump on, right? You don't hardly see anything about their football program, right? Like you might see, and Gerald Riggs Jr.'s up there coaching like the offensive coordinator or something. So you're like, okay, it's football, whatever. But their wrestling program's all over the place. They got billboards, whatever. And whenever you can make something if you're a winner, people like to support winners, right? How many Alabama fans showed up out of nowhere when Nick Saban started winning national championships? So it goes like that. But when you're building something, and you'll see this in the next, you've been around what, 2 years? Is it 2 years with Ground Zero?
Yes, sir. Officially running and everything, 2 years.
Give it 5 years and see how it translates into the high schools, and then you'll start seeing that support just
it's definitely awesome to see that. We're already starting to kind of trickle in a little bit, but definitely in a couple more years, it's going to be interesting to see what we've got.
I'll say this, like, tell me, like, in the past 2 years, like, you have some high school kids, right?
Yes, sir.
Talk about how they've done in like during the high school season, because I know we were teammates. Bryson was a teammate with a couple of those kids in Iowa. I want to say, what was that, April maybe?
Yeah, for the middle school national duels.
Yeah, I think it was like April. Yep. And dude, they were tough kids, man. Like how do these kids, like, how are they seem to be translating pretty well. Like, tell us about some of your kids and how they're doing right now, how they're improving.
I mean, we've got a number of kids. I hate to leave anybody out, but I mean, just to talk about a few, like Jacob Barlow's one that's been with me, since the start. He just graduated this past year. He was a 3-time state medalist, 4-time state qualifier, Adidas Nationals national champ. And he's up at Cumberland University now. Seth Lindsay, another one that's been with me for the last 4 years. He was at Warren County, had to take a year off due to transferring to Coffee County, so didn't get to compete his senior year, but ended up at Cumberland also with Jake this year. Logan Soller, Alyssa Archer. She's a Franklin County girl, one of our first girls that we built, from the ground up, as we like to say. And she's up at Lindsey Wilson now. We've got a number of kids, man. And then talking about up and comers, we're a real young group this year. We graduated. We had 9 kids move on to wrestle at the collegiate level this past year. So it's definitely a cool thing. And we've got them all up in our gym on the Wall of Fame and stuff. So that's cool for those kids to get to walk in and see. But we're a young group now. We've got some kids coming up. Vaden Moore is an upcoming senior this year. Finished third in small school state last year. He's going to go into the grappler this weekend and preseason nationals in a couple weeks. See what he can do. Chase Creaky races up at Siegel. He's a state third place this last year. Just finished second down at the Super 32 qualifier. He's going to hit all the tournaments. He's going to grappler, Super 32, and preseason nationals. So he's throwing himself in the fire. Going to see what he can do his senior year. I talked about Seth Lindsay, Aiden Lindsay, his little brother's another one. He's an upcoming junior this year. This past weekend, we did a preseason tournament, just knocked off the runner-up in private school. So that was a big win. I talked about Jacob Barlow, his little brother, Will Barlow, is an upcoming freshman. We've kind of thrown him right into the mix. He was on that middle school national duels team you talked about.
I recognize that name, yeah.
He was, and we just threw him into the Super 32 qualifier, got him a couple wins down there as a freshman, 160. So he's a young kid in a big boy class. Yes, sir. So we've got a really good group coming up, and then now this is going to be our first season, like we were talking about at the beginning, actually doing AAU. So we're about to put the info on that out as far as our sign-ups and everything goes. So I'm really, really excited about seeing our little GZ class transfer over to AAU and start to compete and grow as a youth club.
What'll be cool is because Georgia really didn't do this growing up. Tennessee does it a lot better. Georgia, when we were kind of coming through the youth circuit, which we're done with all that as of now, which makes me feel ancient, right? But when we were coming up through the youth circuit, the Tennessee AAU, I got to give, Sutherland, I guess he's been running it since forever.
Man, Mike Sutherland kills it.
Yeah, Mike Sutherland at Boy Buchanan. They won state a couple years ago, first time in history. Yeah, dude. Shout out to Mike. I love Mike and Blake. They're good folks.
They are.
They do a great job with the top 100 series. In Georgia, they did this thing called the Battle of the Belt for a long time, and I think last year they called it the Hammer Series or something. We didn't go to any of them, but it was the same thing. The only thing I didn't like about it was in Georgia, you're wrestling the same kids in the same weight every weekend for 4 months.
Right.
And we only did it one time because it's okay, we're just wrestling the same kids. But in the top 100s in Tennessee, they move them around so much across the state that you're pulling these kids from, when you're in Memphis, you're pulling Mississippi kids and whatever. And then when you're in Nashville, you might pull some Kentucky kids or whatever. So you're and then that one year, the top 100, when it was when they were cramming it, the one in Chattanooga down there at Camp Jordan, which was a brutal nightmare.
That was a rough one. Yep.
That was brutal. I'm so glad they moved it to high schools again, the last couple of years. But that 1 year there, man, you were pulling kids from Illinois and Iowa and whatever. A bunch of kids showed up. That top 100 series is really cool, and it's really cool how you can win your weight, and then there's an overall for the team.
Right.
And, usually how that, and it's just like anything, with team state and stuff, whoever has the most kids are probably going to win, the team thing. But as you build kids and you start seeing, say this year y'all finished 6th or something. I'm just making this up.
Yeah.
Then you're going to have 4 or 5 or 10 more kids coming. And maybe I'm 4th. And then maybe, and it's cool how that kind of balances. So, I'm going to keep track of that through the year, man. I really look forward to seeing how you guys grow. Because, man, for someone in such a small area with wrestling's not, and even in the state of Tennessee, it's always been in the South, Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, they're real top heavy, right? You got 10 stud kids and then everybody else. And it's always kind of been that way. So especially in these little pocket towns. So what you're building in such a small place, man, is so cool. Before we wrap up, we got about 6 minutes. I try to keep them around 30 minutes. Before we cut off here, I wanted to ask a couple more questions. So you got AAU, you got some little guys coming up. You got high school guys that's been through it. You got middle school kids that's been through it. Something I wanted to ask your opinion on. What is your idea of weight cutting? What do you think of weight cutting?
I just had this conversation Sunday at practice with a new kid we had to move in from North Carolina. I'm against it. 1 to 2 pounds, being around there, I don't consider that weight cutting. That's attainable, being 1 to 2 over the day of and things like that. But if you're draining your body, if you're cutting yourself to a point where you can't perform at your best right as soon as you step off the scale, then there's an issue. If you need 5 hours, 6 hours to feel like, okay, I'm back at my best now, then I don't think that's something we need to be doing. Now, when we go to these national level tournaments and it's day before weigh-ins, or like this weekend at the Grappler, the varsity division and the girls aren't till Sunday. They can weigh Friday night. So that's 48 hours to put weight on. When we're going to those, we address it differently. Because you're also talking about, if those kids are going to those tournaments, they're probably your better kids that have been through it and hopefully know how to do it the correct way. So when it comes to those things, we will push it a little bit more and do some cutting, because we have that time to put the weight back on and get back to our normal self. But man, throughout the season, the actual season, AAU or middle school or high school, is such a grind, because it's 2 months to 3 months of straight every Tuesday, every Thursday, every other Saturday. You're having to make weight and wrestle, and you're practicing every day that you're not on the mats, and maybe you get one day off a week, maybe you don't. It just kind of depends. And I'm not a big proponent of weight cutting as far as in season goes. Wrestle somewhere you can hold, wrestle comfortably, and be yourself, but don't push it too much.
See, I'm kind of in the same agreement. I've been in contact a few times with a guy named Ray Yagulski. I think that's how you say his name. He's messaged several times into the Instagram. I sent him a pair of shoes a couple years ago. Really nice guy. He's out in Oregon, and he's always talking about different ways to maintain healthy weight, cut weight, things like that. Everybody knows Jackson Lane, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, I love Jackson Lane. John's cool too. Like, he's crazy, but he'll tell you he's crazy, but he's awesome. Growing up, Bryson and Jackson wrestled like 1,000 freaking times, right? Like, they were like little rivals for a while. Tried to kill each other at Dixie Nationals one year. It looked like an MMA fight.
They always get crazy down there.
Yeah, he just won state as an 8th grader, right, at Macaulay, and he told us in the hallway one day, he's like, man, this is, up at Minion. He's like, he was coming down quite a bit, right? And he had a hard time with it, apparently. And, he said, man, it's rough, because when you're in youth, like up until high school, you're used to that. Okay, I can get down 9 pounds or whatever. I can weigh in, then I can go eat and drink and hydrate and go. So you're kind of brought up in this environment where I can just cut as much as I want. It doesn't matter. I'm going to feel like crap, but I'm going to feel good the next day.
Yeah.
Well, then when you get to high school, just like you said, okay, I got a duel on Tuesday. I got a tournament on Saturday. I got another duel the following Thursday, and I'm practicing every day in between, and I'm 9 pounds over. So I kind of agree with that. Like, I think it's case by case. Like, if there's a scenario like for Macaulay this past year, like, I was so happy for Matt, like them winning state for the first time since 94 or something. I don't remember what it was. Like in that
scenario, boys are back.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. But in that scenario, they had so many kids that they had to get in the lineup. Yeah. And so I kind of understand where that came from. But in general, like if you have 3 kids, I'm just going to make an example, and they're all pretty good, and say they all weigh between 116 and 125, right? You kind of got to, for one, you got to figure out the best kid, right? And then, okay, he kind of gets to pick where he wants to go. Right. And you got to kind of be realistic with, kids that just started wrestling or kids that's wrestled for a long time. Because when it comes to weight cutting, especially in high school, like the kids that's kind of grown up being able to cut weight, even though they had that day, they kind of could probably handle that a lot better than a kid that hasn't. Yeah. So I think it's a case-by-case basis, but I'm with you, man. Like whenever we ever did day of weigh-ins, we never really cut weight, maybe a pound, right? But then like big tournaments where we go to like Super 32 or Tulsa or whatever, we'd always cut and whatever, and you handle that different. Yeah. And of course, that's just the way I think it's always going to be. But I got one last question on this topic, and we'll kind of wrap things up. I have this theory, and I want to know if you agree with me. You don't have to. This is just my theory, okay? I think mat side weigh-ins from kindergarten through high school would be a great thing.
I would be perfectly fine with it. I know there's going to be a lot of old hardcore wrestling people who are against it, and say weight cutting's a part of it and blah blah blah. But there's no sense in putting our kids through that. And if that enables us to keep them in the sport longer, which I think it would in the long run, then I'm all for it. So if we can grow the sport, then let's do it. And it's going to put a better product on the mat in the end. So
absolutely, because like now it's risk reward, right? Okay, I'm going to step on a scale and then I'm going to go wrestle. So do I cut 9 pounds? I'm going to feel like trash. But at the same time, Spencer Lee brought this up here a few months ago. He said that no grown man should weigh 125 pounds.
No, yeah, they definitely got to go up to 57 and 125.
Yeah, and same thing in high school. How many kids do you see that there's hardly no 106s anymore? 10 years ago, there was. Like, kids are getting bigger, faster, and stronger today. Like, we need to migrate up again. At least that's my opinion. Man, I've had a great time learning about the club and stuff. I look forward to continuously to help any way we can.
Definitely, man. Look forward to the partnership continuing.
Yeah, man. Before we go, tell everybody what you think of Mat Clash.
Oh, dude. So it's funny you brought it up. I was talking about Chase Creaky a minute ago. One of my kids, my high schoolers, multiple time state medalist and stuff. And he saw the box over on the table afterwards and was like, "What is this, coach?" And I pulled it out and started showing it to him. Right there, he opens it up, throws the deck out, starts shuffling, starts playing. Fell in love right off the bat, and he said he's going to start taking it to all the tournaments and stuff. And like I already told you, man, me and Jake took it to Fargo with us, and every night we came back to the hotel. He's, "Hey, can we get a duel in Mat Clash? Can we play for a little bit?" So, I mean, it's definitely something different. I'll be honest, when I looked at it, I was like, "There's no way this is going to be, a fun thing to do, sitting here playing cards." But we have had an absolute blast every time we do it, and yeah, I also think it's a good tool. Like, we hand it out to our little GZ kids when we do Wrestler of the Week. It's a great way for the kids and the parents to learn the new scoring system. You've got 3 takedown and 2, 3, 4 near fall and all that, and they can see that and put things together. So I'm all for it. I think it needs to get out there some more. So if you're thinking about it, buy some Mat Clash cards, play with your buddies, get the word out.
Yeah, man. I think I didn't think of that when we built it, of like helping grandma, grandpa, mom, aunt learn how to wrestle. But I've got that's not the first time I've heard that, and I think that's a great thing.
Not just scoring, but the terminology too. Like feet to back. That's something you don't hear a ton, but wrestlers know what it is all the time. So if parents and supporters hear that, then they know now.
And in wave 2, we're working on the artwork. I think we're going to drop it January, February. I think that's the goal now. The cut 'em card, that'll be really interesting to kind of be able to put in. So like eventually, a couple years from now, the goal is to try to build this out to where there's so many specialty cards that nobody has the same deck. And it almost plays out like kind of like Pokemon, where you can kind of in and out alternate. So that's kind of the goal. Brother, I had a good time, man. It was great catching up with you. Thank you for your time. Guys, you can get Mat Clash at bmoneybeastin.com. Randal Jennings, coach, Ground Zero Wrestling. God bless. Episode 8 in the books.